Welcome back to The Deep Dive. We're continuing our analysis of the Bhagavad-gītā, a text known the world over, really not just as scripture, but as, well, maybe the ultimate guide for navigating life's biggest challenges. Last time we sort of painted the broad strokes, set the scene for this huge civil conflict. But today we're really digging into chapter 1. Now, some people kind of skip over this chapter, see it as just the preamble. But we think it's actually, fundamental for understanding the whole human condition. It's where the hero, the famous Arjuna, just completely breaks down.
Right.
And it's not just for dramatic effect. It's showing this universal state, almost a prerequisite condition. You see the total collapse of, worldly wisdom, the crisis that has to hit before any real enlightenment, any transcendental understanding can even begin.
That's exactly the mission today. We want to analyze this breakdown, this paralysis. The Sanskrit term is vyāda, overwhelming grief or despair. And we need to look beyond the surface, beyond the battlefield itself, to see exactly how Arjuna's material attachments clash with his duty, his dharma. And the key thing here is how those attachments are dressed up. They look like morality.
Ah, right. Like he's making a moral argument.
Precisely. They look convincing. But chapter 1 is really about that collision, the shockwave that forces him and us to question everything we thought was stable.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Take us to the scene. Kṛṣṇa. It's not just any field, is it?
No, absolutely not. The name itself, Kṛṣṇa, means fields of the Kurus, but it's explicitly referred to as Dharmakotra, a field of religious duty, a place of pilgrimage even. So the location itself is significant. The atmosphere is incredibly tense. You've got these two massive armies facing each other. Just think about the sheer scale.
Cousins against cousins, teachers against former students. The stakes couldn't be higher. It's a family feud writ large, playing out on this field of duty.
And it's crucial to understand, as the sources point out, this wasn't just some random historical conflict that happened to spark a philosophical discussion later. The purports stress that this war was foreseen, even orchestrated. It was the will of the Supreme, an inevitable event.
Inevitable, why?
Because it was necessary to, cleanse the planet of unrighteous rulers and reestablish dharma, or righteous principles.
Yeah.
So the location, this field of duty, means everyone involved is being judged, not just on their fighting skill, but on their moral choices, their allegiance.
Okay, so the battle is external, but it's also deeply internal from the very start. And we see that internal conflict, that bias, immediately, don't we? Right in the first verse.
We do. It's striking. The blind king Datara, he's miles away from the battlefield, but he asks his secretary Sanyaya, who has been given divine sight, to see the events. He asks, "O Sanyaya, after my sons and the sons of Put assemble in the place of pilgrimage at Kṛṣṇa, desiring to fight, what did they do?"
My sons. That possessiveness hits you straight away.
Exactly. My sons versus the sons of Pach. Not our warriors or the two sides. It immediately establishes his deep-seated bias, his inescapable attachment. He's worried about his side, his lineage.
And this is the king, the person who should be the impartial anchor of the kingdom.
Right. But he can't be objective. His personal affection for his own sons who, let's be clear, are the antagonists, the ones who usurp the kingdom unrighteously. It completely clouds his judgment, his moral compass. He should be concerned with justice, with dharma, with the welfare of all his subjects. But his first thought, his driving anxiety, is purely about his own kin.
It makes you think of leadership today, doesn't it? You see it all the time. Maybe a CEO knows their kid who's high up in the company is cutting corners or doing something unethical. Their duty is clear, protect the company, the shareholders, the principals. But that parental bond, that attachment, it's incredibly powerful. They shield their son or their protege, even when it hurts everyone else. Siddhartha is like the archetype of that failure, where personal feeling overrides public duty.
It's a profound illustration of blinding attachment. And that failure sets the stage, really, for the internal battle Arjuna is about to face. But let's not forget the external threat. The text doesn't downplay the Kaurava army.
No, it says they had some serious warriors.
Oh, absolutely. Text 4 mentions commanders like Droka and Bhuma, Kappa, Kart, described as mighty bowmen, great fighters. And it explicitly says some are equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna. These are formidable opponents. Just looking at the sheer military strength, you wouldn't automatically bet on the Paukovas.
So you've got this terrifying opposing force, but the sources also suggest the outcome is, already known. How does that work?
That's where the transcendental element comes in. It's the crucial difference. The Kauravas had immense material power, yes, but the Paukovas had Lord Kukan on their side, acting as Arjuna's charioteer.
And the conch shells. That's significant too, right?
Hugely significant. When Kṛṣṇa and Arjuna blow their conch shells, the text describes them as transcendental, divyashaha. The sound they make is said to have shattered the hearts of Thokadadara's sons. It wasn't just noise, it was a spiritual sign.
A sign of what, exactly?
A sign that, because the Supreme Lord Kṛṣṇa was present with the Pauravas, there was no hope as victory for the other side. The goddess of fortune, Lakkhana, is always with the Supreme Lord. So where Kṛṣṇa is, victory and fortune are assured. The physical fight still had to happen. It was part of the process, part of the dharma. But spiritually, the fate of the Kauravas was sealed because they had aligned themselves against righteousness.
Wow. So spiritual alignment is the ultimate power, trumping even massive military might.
That's the underlying principle being established right from the start. If you're aligned with the divine will, with dharma, even if the odds look impossible from a material perspective, success is spiritually guaranteed. Though, as Arjuna is about to find out, that success might involve immense personal suffering.
Let's talk about the names used right here, too. Arjuna is called Dhananyaya, winner of wealth. And Kṛṣṇa is Achyuta, the infallible one. And Govinda, one who gives pleasure to the senses and the cows. Why the specific names at this particular moment?
This is subtle but really revealing about Arjuna's initial state of mind. Dhananjaya refers to how Arjuna had helped his elder brother, Yudhishthira, gather wealth for performing great sacrifices. It points to his skill in achieving worldly objectives.
So it highlights his material competence.
Exactly. And calling Kṛṣṇa Achyuta, the infallible one, emphasizes Kṛṣṇa's reliability as a protector, as a perfect charioteer who won't fail him in battle. Govinda relates to pleasure. So at this point, Arjuna still sees Kṛṣṇa mostly through a, let's say, worldly or friendly lens.
He sees him as his powerful friend, his invincible ally, the best possible person to have driving his chariot to ensure victory and regain the kingdom.
Precisely. He doesn't yet fully grasp Kṛṣṇa's position as the supreme personality of Godhead, the ultimate spiritual guide. Their relationship is incredibly close, affectionate, yes, but it's still largely operating on the level of achieving material goals, winning the war, getting the kingdom back, enjoying the results with his friend and helper, Kṛṣṇa.
So the narrative is setting up this shift. He needs to move from seeing Kṛṣṇa as like the ultimate wingman.
You put it that way, yes.
To understanding him as the supreme teacher, the source of all knowledge.
Yeah.
And that initial worldly focus makes his coming breakdown even more powerful, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, because his whole framework is about to shatter.
Okay, so this brings us to the absolute core of Chapter 1, the psychological turning point. Arjuna, the seemingly invincible warrior, Kapidvaja, the one with the flag of Hanuman signifying victory, he makes a request.
Yes, this is it. Text 21 and 22. He asks Kṛṣṇa, whom he addresses as Achyuta, the infallible one, Senior Uphair Matai Slapaya Mishuta, place my chariot between the two armies, O infallible one.
Why? What does he want to see?
Yavatitan nirika ha yodo kama navastitan karmaya sakayudayomas minratsa mudyame. So that I may see those who are present here, desiring to fight, and know with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms.
Okay, so on the surface, it sounds like a warrior's request. Scope out the enemy, identify the key players he needs to take down. Tactical assessment.
That seems to be his conscious intention, yes. He wants to see the generals, the political rivals, the people arrayed against him whom he's ready to defeat to regain his kingdom. He's thinking tactically.
But Kṛṣṇa, being infallible, Achyuta knows exactly what Arjuna needs to see, not just what he wants to see. He places the chariot right in the middle. That location between the two armies, Madai, it feels incredibly symbolic.
Oh, it's profoundly metaphorical. That space isn't just a patch of land. It's the threshold. It's the liminal space between duty and attachment, between the external demands of the warrior code and the internal, deeply personal bonds of love and kinship.
The point of no return, almost.
You could say that. Because when Kṛṣṇa parks the chariot there, looking out at the Kaurava army, Arjuna's perspective shifts instantly, dramatically. He's not just seeing enemy soldiers anymore.
What does he see?
He sees faces he knows, deeply knows. The text says he sees Pitanatha Pitamahan, Akarian Matulam Rubran, Putran Sakistata, fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends.
Oh, wow. Not just abstract enemies, family, mentors, friends.
Exactly. He sees Binoma, his beloved grandsire. He sees Drodha, his military guru, the one who taught him archery. He sees his cousins, the very people he grew up with. The war suddenly becomes horrifyingly personal. It's fratricide. It's killing the people who shaped him.
And this realization doesn't just hit him intellectually, does it? It's physical.
It's completely visceral. The shock bypasses all his warrior training, all his mental preparation. It manifests physically as veda, that overwhelming grief and confusion. Text 29 gives us these incredibly vivid details.
Tell us about those symptoms.
It says, Siddhanti mama gatrach muhatka parisyati, vipatishka shardir me aromachka jayati. My limbs are quivering, my mouth is drying up, my whole body is trembling, and my hair is standing on end. And then, crucially,
The bow.
Gadvasate hastat fakkaiva paridayat. The Gatwaya bow is slipping from my hand, and my skin is burning. The very symbol of his strength, his dharma as a warrior, is literally falling away from him because the emotional impact is so devastating.
It's not philosophical doubt yet. It's a gut reaction, a complete physiological meltdown driven by this wave of grief and attachment.
Yes, the physical reaction comes first. The arguments, the rationalizations that come after this initial bodily collapse. It highlights just how powerful material attachment is. It's not just a preference or a feeling. It can physically paralyze you, stop you dead in your tracks, even if you're the greatest warrior on earth.
It makes me think of those real-life situations where duty clashes horribly with relationships. Like, imagine a CEO who built a company with friends, colleagues they've known for decades. And now, due to market forces, they have to implement massive layoffs. They know intellectually it might be necessary for the company's survival, for the greater good, but the thought of personally ending the careers of people they care about, people who trusted them, it causes real physical stress. Insomnia, anxiety, maybe even physical pain. The body rebels against the duty.
That's a perfect analogy. Or an athlete facing a championship game against their best friend who just transferred to the rival team. The desire to win, the duty to their team clashes with the deep affection for their friend. That internal conflict can absolutely manifest physically, impacting performance. Arjuna is experiencing the ultimate version of that.
And the commentary, the purport, adds another layer here. It suggests his grief isn't purely selfless compassion. There's a material calculation mixed in.
Yes, and this is a subtle but crucial point for understanding why Kṛṣṇa later rejects his arguments. While Arjuna's affection for his relatives is natural and understandable, the purport clarifies that his distress is also tied to a fear about the results of victory.
What kind of fear?
The fear that, if he kills all his relatives, who will be left to enjoy the kingdom with him? He worries he'll be unable to share his opulence after victory. It's described as a typical calculation of material life. So his sorrow isn't just, oh, my loved ones will die. It's also, my enjoyment of the victory will be ruined because the people I want to share it with will be gone.
Ah, okay. So it's not just altruism. It's partly about his own future sense gratification, his ability to enjoy the fruits of the war. That attachment to shared enjoyment is clouding his understanding of duty.
Exactly. It's attachment to temporary relationships and the pleasures derived from them, masquerading as a higher moral concern. He's valuing the temporary social circle over the eternal principle of dharma. He's essentially saying, this duty is too painful for my senses. The outcome won't bring me the kind of pleasure I want.
And there's another calculation mentioned too, isn't there? About wanting Kṛṣṇa to do the dirty work.
Yes, there's a hint that he wishes Kṛṣṇa would just step in and eliminate the wrongdoers himself. Arjuna wants the desired outcome, the defeat of the Kauravas and the establishment of righteousness. But he's recoiling from taking the necessary action himself, partly because he fears the sinful reactions, karma, involved in killing.
He wants the result without the personal cost, without getting his hands dirty, so to speak.
Pretty much. It shows he's still thinking in terms of personal gain and loss, personal sin and merit, rather than understanding action performed as duty, without attachment, for the satisfaction of the Supreme. He hasn't grasped that concept yet.
You see that sometimes, right? People want a big social problem, fix poverty, injustice, whatever, but they absolutely refuse to get involved in the messy, complex, often morally ambiguous work of politics or activism needed to actually make change. They fear getting compromised, or they just find it unpleasant.
They want the perfect, clean solution without engaging in the imperfect, difficult process. Arjuna, at this moment, embodies that paralysis. He's caught between genuine grief, fear of sinful reaction, and fear of losing the material enjoyment he associates with his relatives. And this paralysis now forces him to build a case, an argument, for why he shouldn't fight.
Right. So the physical breakdown, the vyāda, leads to the intellectual justification. He needs to convince himself and Koi that quitting is the right thing to do. And the arguments he makes sound pretty compelling.
They really do. On the surface, they seem profoundly moral, deeply ethical. They represent, in a way, the highest form of worldly reasoning when it's detached from spiritual understanding. That's why Kṛṣṇa's eventual response is so jarring.
Okay, let's unpack these arguments. What's the first pillar he builds for inaction?
He starts with the immediate personal consequence, the fear of sin, of patakam. In texts 37 and 38, he argues that fighting and killing his own kinsmen, Svajana, and friends, Mitradrohe, is simply sinful. He explicitly asks, how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? He concludes that engaging in such sinful acts, Papa, will only bring misery.
So his argument is the negative karma, the sinful reaction, outweighs any potential material gain, like winning back the kingdom. It's a spiritual cost-benefit analysis, basically.
Yes, but it's a flawed analysis from the perspective Kenta will soon reveal. Arjuna is calculating based on the assumption that this is ordinary motivated violence driven by personal ambition or anger. He doesn't yet see it as a necessary action performed as a religious duty, dharma, ordained by a higher principle. When actions performed as duty without attachment to results, the karmic reaction is different. But because his vision is clouded by attachment, my kinsmen, my friends, he foresees only the negative consequences of mundane killing.
Okay, fear of personal sin is pillar one. Then he broadens his scope, doesn't he? He moves from personal karma to, societal collapse.
He does. This is perhaps his most sophisticated argument, where he sounds less like a grieving relative and more like a concerned leader thinking about the future of civilization. This is his second pillar, the destruction of family traditions.
What's the argument there?
He argues, starting around text 39, that with the destruction of the dynasty, Kulataya, the eternal family traditions, Kulatarma Sanatanos, perish. When the elders and the leaders of the families are killed in the war, he says the rest of the family, particularly the women, become vulnerable to degradation or irreligion. Adharma.
And what's a consequence of that widespread irreligion, according to Arjuna?
The ultimate result, he fears, is Vartasekakara unwanted progeny, the mixing of social classes in an unregulated way. He believes this leads to a kind of societal chaos, where traditional duties and responsibilities break down, leading to hellish conditions both for the families involved and for the ancestors who depend on their descendants' piety.
So he's essentially arguing that fighting this war, even if it seems righteous in the short term, will inevitably destroy the very fabric of society, leading to chaos and suffering for generations to come. He feels he's being responsible by not fighting to preserve social order.
It sounds incredibly responsible, doesn't it? Protect the women, protect the traditions, prevent social chaos. Who could argue with that?
But there's a flaw in that reasoning, too.
Well, the major flaw is the assumption that the eternal family traditions and the social order haven't already been severely damaged, even destroyed, by the actions of Tutara's sons, the very people Arjuna is hesitant to fight. The Kauravas represent adharma, their misrule, their injustice, their attempt to kill the Pandavas and usurp the throne is the chaos. Arjuna's inaction wouldn't preserve dharma. It would allow the existing adharma to continue unchecked, which would inevitably lead to the very societal breakdown he fears, just maybe in a different way.
I see. So he's trying to prevent a future chaos by tolerating the present chaos.
Something like that, yes. His argument ignores the immediate necessity of stopping the aggressors to reestablish order.
Okay, so fear of sin, fear of societal collapse. What's the third argument? This one feels very personal.
It is. In text 8 of chapter 2, though he expresses the sentiment strongly here in chapter 1 as well, he makes it explicit. He says that even if he wins an unrivaled prosperous kingdom on earth, or even achieves supremacy over the demigods in the heavens, he sees nothing that could drive away this grief which is drying up my senses.
Basically, even if I win everything imaginable, it won't make me happy. This sorrow is too deep.
Exactly. This is a moment of profound, albeit materially based, realization. He understands correctly that worldly success, no matter how grand, cannot ultimately touch or remove the deep existential suffering, the lamentation in the heart. He knows the kingdom, the power, the wealth, it's all ultimately unsatisfying if the cost is this immense grief.
That part sounds true, doesn't it? Material things don't bring lasting happiness.
It is true. That insight is correct. The problem isn't the insight itself, it's his conclusion. His conclusion is, therefore I should quit, I should renounce the action. He correctly identifies the limitations of material gain, but his proposed solution is inaction and withdrawal, not seeking a higher, transcendental solution that can address the root of suffering.
So he diagnoses the disease, the emptiness of material success, but prescribes the wrong medicine, paralysis instead of spiritual seeking.
Perfectly put. He sees the futility but reacts with despair, not inquiry.
So there we have it, 3 seemingly powerful arguments. Avoid sin, prevent social chaos, recognize the vanity of worldly gain. They sound so reasonable, so moral. And yet, as you mentioned, Kṛṣṇa's response when it comes to the beginning of chapter 2 is anything but sympathetic.
It's famously, almost shockingly, blunt. Gita essentially tells him to snap out of it. He calls Arjuna's stance klebhya, which translates to impotence, unmanliness, or degrading weakness. He calls it kaduraya dardarmalyam, petty weakness of heart. He says it's anarya jono, not befitting an Aryan, a noble person. He basically says, shake off this weakness and stand up and fight.
Wow. After Arjuna pours out his heart with these ethical-sounding concerns, Kṛṣṇa calls it petty weakness. That seems incredibly harsh. How do we understand that? Why isn't Kṛṣṇa validating Arjuna's compassion?
We have to understand the root Kṛṣṇa is addressing. He's not dismissing compassion itself. He's dismissing the source of Arjuna's paralysis, which he identifies as ignorance, Arjuna. The purports use the term mandan, meaning slow or foolish, specifically referring to those stuck in the bodily concept of life. Ken sees that Arjuna's arguments, however eloquently phrased, are ultimately based on a fundamental mistake, mistaking material attachment for genuine morality or duty, dharma.
Okay, break down that bodily concept of life, or mandan. What does that mean practically here?
It means that Arjuna's entire framework is based on identifying the self with the temporary physical body and identifying relationships based solely on those bodily connections. This body is me. Those bodies are my grandfather, my teacher, my cousins. Killing those bodies is the ultimate evil because these relationships are everything. That's the thinking.
And Kṛṣṇa's perspective is different.
Completely different. Kṛṣṇa is about to teach him that the true self is the Atma, the eternal soul, which is never born and never dies. The body is just a temporary vehicle like clothing. The relationships based on these temporary bodies are also temporary. Therefore, Arjuna's overwhelming grief, while real to him in his current state of illusion, is based on a false premise about who he is and who they are. His compassion is misdirected because it's focused entirely on the temporary material covering, not the eternal reality.
So Kṛṣṇa isn't saying don't feel compassion. He's saying your compassion is based on ignorance of the soul, and it's stopping you from doing your actual duty.
Precisely. And what is Arjuna's actual duty? He's a Kshatriya, a warrior, a leader. His dharma is to protect the citizens, uphold justice, and fight against aggression and unrighteousness. The reports state clearly that a Kshatriya's duty includes applying violence in suitable cases for law and order.
And this is definitely a suitable case.
The most suitable case imaginable. The Kauravas represent the pinnacle of dharma. They've cheated, lied, attempted murder, usurped a kingdom. Refusing to fight them isn't piety. From the perspective of Kshatriya dharma, it's dereliction of duty. It's actually considered demoniac to shirk this responsibility when righteousness is at stake. Fighting for a just cause is the Kshatriya's path to elevation. Refusing to fight out of attachment leads to degradation.
It reminds me again of that student example, the pre-med student facing organic chemistry or the engineering student facing advanced calculus. It's incredibly difficult, stressful. They might tell themselves, this stress isn't healthy, or I've lost my passion, or maybe this isn't my true calling. But sometimes the underlying reality is a fear of the hard work, a fear of failure, or an attachment to an easier, more comfortable path. They might frame the decision to quit in noble terms self-care, following my heart. But it could actually be, as Kṛṣṇa puts it, a kind of petty weakness of heart in the face of a necessary challenge. The difficult duty is the path.
That's a very strong parallel. It's the temptation to choose the path of least resistance and then rationalize it as the morally superior choice. Arjuna's elaborate arguments are, in essence, a highly sophisticated rationalization born from overwhelming emotional attachment and fear.
And this whole edifice of rationalization, built on the foundation of grief, leads to the final iconic image of chapter 1, verse 46.
Yes, the culmination of his breakdown. Sanjaya reports back to the Tare. Evam Arjuna sakiratapasa upavishad visya sashorashabai shokasavinya manasa. Having spoken thus, Arjuna cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down in the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief.
Just sits down, gives up, drops his weapons.
It's an unforgettable picture of complete surrender. but surrender to despair. Not yet surrender to Kṛṣṇa. It's the moment his own strength, his own understanding, his worldly morality, his elaborate arguments, everything has failed him. He's hit rock bottom. He's utterly paralyzed, confused, and miserable.
And paradoxical as it sounds, that total failure is exactly what needed to happen.
Absolutely. That complete exhaustion of his own material resources, intellectual, emotional, physical, is the necessary prerequisite. He has to reach the point where he admits, I don't know what to do. My way isn't working. Only then can he become truly receptive to a higher wisdom, to the transcendental knowledge that Kate is about to impart. His despair creates the opening.
Wow. So chapter 1 isn't just setting the stage for the philosophy. It is the first crucial step of the philosophy itself, recognizing the failure of the material approach.
Precisely. It establishes the problem, the human condition of being bound by attachment and illusion, before the solution can be presented.
Okay, let's try to bring this all together then. Our deep dive into chapter 1 shows it's far more than just context. It's really mapping out this universal crisis.
It is. Arjuna's predicament on that specific battlefield, Kṛṣṇa, is really the predicament of every human soul facing a major, difficult, but necessary choice or duty. Chapter 1 demonstrates profoundly how our deepest attachments, even seemingly good ones like love for family, and our fear of negative consequences, our fear of suffering or loss, can completely paralyze us. They stop us from doing what needs to be done.
And the tendency, as we saw with Arjuna, is to find very noble-sounding reasons to avoid that difficult duty, to mistake avoidance for wisdom or morality.
Exactly. And that state of viyata, that despair and confusion, while painful, is shown to be, in a sense, necessary. It's a kind of purification through suffering. Arjuna had to hit the wall, had to see the utter inadequacy of his own material intelligence, his own ethical framework based on the bodily concept, before he could genuinely surrender and ask for help, before he could receive the spiritual guidance that begins in chapter 2.
It's like you have to empty the cup before it can be filled.
A good way to put it. If we just rely on our own minds, clouded as they are by attachment and aversion, the mind itself becomes the enemy. The Gita says later, the mind can be the best friend or the worst enemy. For Arjuna at this point, his uncontrolled mind, overwhelmed by grief, is his enemy. His failure to manage it himself creates the necessity for Kṛṣṇa's intervention. He's finally ready for a direction beyond his own flawed calculations.
So thinking about the listener now, what does this journey through Arjuna's crisis in chapter 1 mean for us today, dealing with our own lives, our own battlefields?
It asks us to look honestly at our own challenges. What is that big, difficult decision or situation you're facing right now? Maybe it's in your career, a relationship, a commitment you've made, a change you know you need to enact. Where do you feel that pull to just stop, to put down your bow and arrows, metaphorically speaking?
To just sit down on the chariot and say, I can't do this.
Right. And then the crucial step is to examine the reason for wanting to quit. Is it truly based on a clear-sighted moral principle, a higher duty? Or is it actually viyata? Is it driven by fear, fear of loss, fear of conflict, fear of suffering? Is it attachment to comfort, attachment to how things used to be, attachment to specific people or outcomes? Is it material attachment wearing the convincing disguise of ethical concern?
That's a really challenging question to ask ourselves, honestly.
It is. And that brings us back to that powerful realization Arjuna had, the one kernel of truth in his despair we talked about from text 8.
That even the greatest imaginable material success wouldn't actually cure his sorrow.
Exactly. That's maybe the most profound takeaway from chapter 1 for modern life. Arjuna saw that even winning an undisputed kingdom, even gaining supremacy over the gods, the highest prizes the material world can offer, wouldn't touch the fundamental grief in his heart.
So what does that tell us?
It tells us that if our decisions, our goals, our very lives are primarily driven by seeking these temporary material outcomes, fueled by attachment and ignorance of our true spiritual nature, then even if we achieve spectacular success by worldly standards, that core dissatisfaction, that existential ache will remain, realizing that the kingdom, whatever form it takes for you, wealth, status, pleasure, won't ultimately satisfy the soul. That realization is the absolutely essential first step. It's the beginning of the path toward genuine wisdom, the kind of wisdom that can actually heal that sorrow.
A powerful place to pause and reflect as we navigate our own duties and attachments. Recognizing the limit of the material solution is the doorway to the spiritual one. Thank you for guiding us through that intense first chapter.
Thank you. It sets the stage perfectly for the real teachings to begin.
Indeed. Join us next time as we dive into Chapter 2, where Kṛṣṇa starts to provide the answers to Arjuna's crisis, beginning the journey into profound transcendental knowledge. Thanks for tuning in to the Deep Dive.